morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this session for International Education Week. International Education Week is a week-long celebration of all things international, whether it's highlighting international students, promoting exchanges and study abroad, or a dialogue with our partners abroad. We believe that internationalization can happen abroad or here at home. We encourage you to please participate and leave questions or comments in the chat. Before I get to our panelists' biographies, I want to let everyone know that at the end of the session, we will announce the winner for a box of international snacks, and you must be present to win. Let me go screen share. To start us off, Dr. Áine Kelly is the professor in physiology and associate dean of undergraduate science education in Trinity College Dublin. She holds a first-class honors degree in physiology and PhD in neuroscience from Trinity College Dublin. Her research expertise lies at the interface between exercise physiology and neuroscience. Her specific research focus is an assessment of how lifestyle factors such as physical activity and fitness can enhance brain function throughout the lifespan and help to protect against age-related decline in cognitive function. She is president of Neuroscience Ireland, Ireland's National Neuroscience Society. Brad Chandler is a professor of biology, performed field research in Texas and Mexico, taught at Texas State University, was a marine biologist for the state of Texas, and has been teaching at Palo Alto College since 1996. He has taken students on many ecology trips and to academic meetings in Boston, New Orleans, San Diego, San Francisco, Oklahoma, Texas, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. He is also the study abroad program leader for Ireland and Scotland at Alamo colleges.
Great, Alicia. Thanks so much for the introduction. And before Professor Chandler and I get on to our discussion and question and answer session, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Trinity College Dublin. And you can see some photographs of our beautiful campus there on the slide. I'm really delighted to be with you today to speak to you about Trinity and to talk to you about what it's like to study there. So if any of the attendees have any questions for me later, I'd be delighted to answer them. So to introduce Trinity, it's a beautiful campus in the heart of Dublin City, and Dublin is Ireland's capital city. Ireland is a small country. We have less than 7 million people on the whole island. And Dublin City, if you include the larger metropolitan area, has a population of 1.2 million. So by US standards, we are small. But that has its advantages, which we can talk about later on. Trinity College Dublin is the oldest university in Ireland and one of the oldest in Europe. It was founded by Queen Elizabeth I in 1592. So this year we celebrated our 428th birthday. Trinity is Ireland's top ranked university. We are one of only 23 universities in Europe that are part of the League of European Research Universities, along with the likes of the Karolinska Institute, University of Oxford, University of Cambridge. We're very student focused and we provide a liberal and inclusive environment where respectful debate is encouraged. We have 18,000 students in our undergraduate and our postgraduate programs across all of the major disciplines in the arts, humanities, business, law, science, engineering, and health sciences. Trinity has produced some of the world's finest and most original minds, including the writers Oscar Wilde and Samuel Beckett, who is a Nobel laureate, the scientists William Rowan Hamilton and Ernest Walton, who's also a Nobel laureate, the political thinker Edmund Burke, and the former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, who was also the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. In addition, Trinity has honoured several high-profile American political figures in recent years. we awarded former Secretary of State and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton an honorary doctorate in 2018. And your incoming president, Joe Biden, at least when the other guy gets out of the way, was awarded an honorary degree from Trinity in 2016. And he is very much a friend of Ireland and of Trinity, as you will probably know. Trinity has a very special relationship with the US. We have numerous well-established research and educational collaborations with the leading US universities. And many of our longest standing relationships are with US universities. And it is the most popular destination for our own Irish students going outbound on global exchanges. The US is the most popular destination. And the historical connection between Ireland and the US positions Trinity as a prime destination for US students to come here. And students from the US are the largest cohort of international students in Trinity, both for full degree undergraduate and study abroad programs. Our faculty makes many trips to the US, to our partner colleges, but that's obviously not happening at the moment because we're grounded due to COVID, but we do have a lot of faculty visiting the US under more normal circumstances. And we also attend many open days to give US students information about our university. And we've had some very successful online events recently, obviously, because we can't travel. And every year we generally host many visits from American universities. So in 2018, we had 26 different delegations visiting Trinity from across the US, including guidance counselors and so on who want to find out more about Trinity. And the discussions are usually around student exchange partnerships, study abroad programs, academic collaborations, and so on. And Trinity has also welcomed several high-profile American figures in recent years. Obviously, the aforementioned Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, but also Michelle Obama and her daughters visited in 2016, and also Meghan Markle and her husband visited in 2019. And one of the places that we always bring our honoured guests, and in fact it's open usually in non-COVID times, it's open to anybody who wants to visit, is the beautiful long room that's there on the top right of the screen. I'm not sure if everybody's seeing it as pixelated. I'm seeing it as a little bit pixelated, but it's often called the most beautiful room in Ireland. It is a fabulous library that is wood paneled, has so many leather bound books, and I'm sure Brad has visited there on more than one occasion probably. And in fact, you might not be able to see clearly from the photographs, but when Meghan Markle was here last year, she looked at the row of sculptural busts. So these marble figures representing the great and the good in arts and science historically. And she said, where are the women? Because of all of the 40 busts that were there, they were all men. So the likes of Plato and Socrates and Shakespeare and Jonathan Swift and so on. And she's not the first person to have asked that question, but I think she sort of almost shamed us into thinking about it a little bit more. So last year, a call was launched for suggestions for females to add to the sort of hall of honor, if you like, in the long room. So we're hoping to have the results of that call fairly soon, where women will take their rightful place alongside the men in the long room. So as I said, the US we have such an important relationship with the US and Trinity, and it's our largest collaborator in terms of research as well. So we have more than 790 collaborating institutions on a research basis in the US, between the US and Trinity. In terms of the US students who are here at the moment, in the last academic year, 2019-20, we had 1,110 American students enrolled in Trinity for full degree programs, both undergraduate and postgraduate. And we also have students coming on sort of semester abroad and study abroad options and so on. We also offer a dual BA with Columbia University, which I can talk about a little bit later on. So this is a program where students spend the first 2 years in Trinity and then the second 2 years at Columbia University in New York. And we have that across a variety of programs in the sciences and in the arts. And as I said, we also get a lot of visiting students. So again, by far the biggest cohort of students who come for a semester or for a year, again, come from the US. And they can do that through, we've got a number of study abroad providers that Trinity has relationships with. So there are ways of making your applications in that way. So just to point out as well, sort of the demographic from across the US, applications from Texas for undergraduate programs were the 7th highest of the 50 states of the US to study in Ireland, and acceptances were pretty much matched. So the 7th highest number of acceptances. And for postgrads, it was the 4th highest from the state of Texas. So the biggest number of US students also is in our biological and biomedical sciences program, which is a program that I'm very much involved in teaching as well. So we can talk about that a little bit later on. So that's sort of an overall introduction to Trinity and just the context of the US students who study with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a great overview. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. We have a few questions that we prearranged that Dr. Kelly has agreed to answer for us. The first one is, one of the missions of Alamo colleges is to increase our students' awareness of their opportunities to study abroad during their academic career. So what types of study abroad opportunities does Trinity College Dublin specifically offer international students?
Yeah, so there are several different ways that international students can attend Trinity. Obviously, students can register for the full program, be that a 4-year program or a 5-year program, depending on the degree. So that's a possibility if you want to do all of your undergraduate education, let's say, in Trinity. But we also get a lot of visiting students who can come for 1 semester or 1 full academic year. And we have a really helpful global office and admissions office that students can either contact themselves or via some study abroad providers that we have relationships with in Trinity. And as I've said, we also have a program that's very attractive for some students who want to have the experience of European undergraduate experience and also the US. So we have that dual BA program with Columbia University. So we have the first 2 years in Trinity, the second 2 years in Columbia, and at the end of that program, you get 2 degrees, 1 from each institution. So you're a graduate of Trinity and a graduate of Columbia. And that's proving very, very popular option, especially for US students who would just like that bit of European experience, but also want to have the US college experience as well. And then also we have many postgraduate programs that students can enroll in, and we have some research exchanges as well. So we can have students coming to undertake, a short research project, perhaps in the summer, or else for the postgraduate students particularly, they might visit to carry out a part of their research project in Trinity. So there's a variety of different options if you just want to get a sort of a small taste of life in Trinity, or if you want to come for the full program.
What a great range of opportunities you offer. Do you mind if we ask, what career opportunities are available in Europe for international students who major in the sciences?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are so many opportunities because of the training that you get as a scientist. So I think we often talk about transferable skills. That's something in education that's sort of quite a buzzword, where students can take the knowledge and the skills that they've developed through their program, and they can apply it in a lot of different areas. And I mean, science is fantastic for that because you get, the numerical and the analytical skills that you can apply to a range of different careers. And you get that whole development of critical thinking. And we in Trinity have described what we call graduate attributes. So there are 4 graduate attributes that we would like our students to have developed, and we construct the curriculum in order that they will develop these graduate attributes during their time with us. And they are to think independently, to act responsibly, to develop continuously, and to, oh gosh, I can't remember the 4 of them. It's Friday afternoon. Oh gosh, what's the 4th one? It'll come back to me. Anyway, they're all great and they're all transferable.
That's great.
So in terms of careers, what I can tell you that our graduates have gone on to do, our science graduates in particular. So about 1/3 of our science graduates, regardless of their discipline, will go on to some kind of further study and will end up working as scientists. So that could be, they might want to pursue a PhD and go into research in the academic sphere, or perhaps, in industry. About 1/3 of our students then won't work as scientists, but they will use their scientific training and expertise in their job. So we have people go on to be, science teachers, science journalists, maybe work in the agricultural or agri-food sector, or those kinds of things. And then about 1/3 of our graduates from science don't actually work, don't use their science knowledge, but they'll use their science skills. So those kinds of things like numeracy and, analytical ability and critical thinking and so on. So actually quite a few of our students end up working in the financial services sector simply because of those kinds of skills they've developed during their time as trainee scientists. So really there are enormous opportunities for any science graduate anywhere in the world, because of the training that is received. And just to say as well, for US students, one of the things that's quite attractive to them in coming to Ireland is that if you come here on a student visa and you do your undergraduate program in Ireland, you automatically get a work visa for a year after graduation. And if you're a postgraduate, you automatically get a work visa for 2 years after graduation. So if you want to stay on and gain employment in Ireland after your degree, you can do that.
What a great opportunity. You mentioned one of the skills that you stress is critical thinking, which I believe is so important today, and a very tough skill to teach, actually, other people.
Absolutely. I think you just have to do it literally through training and experience, and giving students the experience of being able to develop that, because there's so much information available to us. I mean, getting information isn't an issue anymore, or even having to remember information necessarily. It's how you put that information together and how you apply it that's key. And knowing how to critique information and the sources of information, so that you can be convinced that they're genuine and real.
In one of our previous conversations, we discussed your undergraduate program, and you mentioned that your undergraduate students all of them graduate with honors by performing a required undergraduate research as part of their capstone curriculum that you have. What types of projects do your students typically engaged in, and how are these projects funded? Is this a public or money or a private enterprise cooperative between business? How does this set up in Europe?
Yeah, so in terms of the capstone project, so every undergraduate will do an independent piece of research, usually in the final year. And the type of project really depends on the degree and the area that the students are working in. So in the sciences, generally it's a lab-based, sort of a wet lab project where students are they're generating data within the lab of a sort of a senior scientist, and working as part of their team for a period of time. For some of our students in the natural sciences, they go out in the field, they go out and generate data from field work. And some of those that field work is international. Every year our zoology students, now we're not sure whether it's going to happen next year or not, our zoology students go to Kenya to do sort of, surveys and so on, biodiversity surveys and that kind of thing. For our other students in other areas, our music students will write a composition. Our drama students will either direct a play or write something, or, so it's very much experiential. Our other sort of arts and humanities students will do research perhaps on a particular, a particular book, or, whatever that might be. But for our science students, it's usually sort of a hands-on lab project. And how it's funded is it's just through the degree. So the students, the students don't pay any extra for this. It's part of their program. So the university centrally funds those projects. Now, in reality, what actually happens, because some areas of research can be very expensive, usually the scientists are kind of supplementing that with their own research funds. And obviously, if travel is involved, as it is for some of the things that I described, like the zoology projects, students will self-fund the travel. But there are also sort of scholarships available as well to supplement that. So for some of the courses as well, particularly in computer sciences and engineering, there can be partnerships with industry, and the capstone will be a placement in industry. So obviously the industry partners are co-funding that. So really it just depends on the kind of program a student's registered for, but certainly by and large there's no additional cost to the student in doing that. And we find the research projects really valuable because it's where the students get to apply everything that they've learned. And being able to go into a lab and work with the senior scientist and really carry out an original piece of research, it's a huge advantage to our students as well, particularly for those who might be interested perhaps in pursuing a master's or a PhD. It gives them a real taste of what research is like, and the downsides and the upsides, so that they can get a good sense of whether it's for them or not, or whether it's something that they really want to do. And also it just gives you a whole different appreciation of, reading research papers or even reading textbooks and, seeing where the information that's in textbooks actually came from. So it's challenging. It's a challenging thing to undertake, but the students really love it.
Here in our area, most of our undergraduates don't perform research. It's the exception. And I like how that's your model to be inclusive with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that the university, as I said, these are sort of centrally funded. They've decided to prioritize because of the benefits to the students and for their future careers as well. It makes students quite competitive then for master's or PhD programs if they have some research experience. Also, sometimes during it's possible to do sort of a research internship during the summers in between the normal academic years. So there are some scholarships available for that, and various ways of applying for funding, to permit students to do that.
Wonderful. Next slide. So, Dr. Kelly, do you recruit students to your personal research program, and how are these students selected out of everyone that applies?
Yeah, so I'm very lucky to have a really good research group at the moment. So I have a new postdoc who has just started and a new PhD student. And again, my lab is quite international at the moment. I have a postdoc from the UK, I have a PhD student from Ireland, I have another PhD student from Switzerland via Portugal, and my postdoc is Hungarian, and she did her PhD in New Zealand, and then she did some postdoc work in McGill in Canada before coming to me. And also during the normal course of the academic year, I would have some undergraduate research students in my lab, or some MSc students in my lab, but also I've had students come in on summer internships and so on. So where I can, I try to give students a research experience. So generally, I mean, there are two ways. So here we're really talking about postgraduate level students. So there are two ways normally that I would kind of recruit a student into the lab. Either I get a funded grant from the sort of a national funding body or an international funding body. So obviously in the US you have the NIH and various other funding agencies. In Ireland it's Science Foundation Ireland and the Health Research Board. So if you're successful in getting grant funding that you can employ research students or research staff, then I would literally just advertise. And this is something actually where social media has made such a huge difference, because the people that I've recently recruited, they saw the job advert on Twitter. So usually, you know, traditionally you'd put the job on particular websites or, you know, Nature Jobs or whatever it is. But, you know, I tweeted this out and people retweeted it and so on. And that's where those two particular people saw that and applied. So that's something positive about Twitter. But the alternative then is sometimes students can apply for scholarships that they are awarded. So there are a few different types of scholarships or fellowships that are available. So sometimes that is funding that they get that they can use to go anywhere, or more normally they would write that in collaboration with their potential supervisor. And then it's an award made to the student to work with you. But sometimes I've had students, international students as well, contact me and say, I'm really looking for an international research experience, and could I come and do a few weeks in the summer in your lab? And if it's the case that it's possible and we have the space and so on, I would try to facilitate that. Obviously, that's not happening at the moment because of the travel restrictions with COVID. But usually it is something that's possible.
It's interesting. That's the first good use of Twitter that I've ever heard of. In one of our previous conversations, we talked about your role at Trinity. You're not only the undergraduate, the Dean of Undergraduate Student Research, but student education, but you're also an administrator. You're a research faculty, you're a teaching faculty. So you wear several hats at Trinity, whereas our administrators tend not to be in the teaching arena most of the time. So how do you professionally balance your academic and administrative duties at the same time and perform so many duties?
With difficulty. I mean, the problem, this is the great thing, I think, about this type of job. And it's also the problem with it as well. I think the wonderful thing is that there is so much variety, and, I wouldn't want to be a research only. I love teaching. I love that interaction with the students. I love trying to enthuse them about the subjects that I teach. So I don't think I'd like to do pure research. I love my research, but I really enjoy teaching. So I think it's really good to have the balance there between teaching and research. And actually, I mean, different countries and even different institutions have different models. And in Trinity, we don't have, I know in some universities you can have like a research track or a teaching track, depending. We don't have that. Everybody's expected to do both. So depending on the level of somebody's research, they'll do more or less teaching. That's something that's kind of sorted out at a local level, at a departmental level, but it's expected that you will do teaching and research. And part of that is because we are a research-led university and we provide research-led teaching. So we want our students to get the benefit of hearing directly from researchers about what's going on in their labs, about, the latest developments. And these are people who are, generating knowledge, who are traveling to conferences or going to virtual conferences the way it is at the moment, and really getting the latest information about that area and then being able to present it to the students so that they're really up to date with what's happening in a particular field. And also on the flip side of that, your teaching can influence your research as well. Because students can come up with the most amazing questions about your research, stuff that you wouldn't have thought about. And I mean, that's happened to me on more than one occasion where a question that a student has asked me, I said, I don't know that, or I've never thought about it like that. And then that makes you think about how you do your own research. So I think there are two things that I'm really glad that in Trinity they go hand in hand. Now the admin stuff is a totally different thing. Again, we're a bit peculiar in that the main administrative roles that in the university, you must be an academic in order to carry them out. Now, not necessarily the financial ones or those kinds of things, but if you are a dean or an associate dean in Trinity, and indeed just generally in the Irish system and often in the UK system as well, you are an academic, otherwise you won't hold the title of dean. And that's because, and I think it's a good thing, because it means that when decisions are being made, they're being made very much with the academic point of view in mind, and the student experience and the staff experience as well. So I think sometimes if you're quite removed from the kind of cold face of teaching and of research, maybe you don't have the same kind of insight in terms of how things should be run or should be shaped within the university. The good thing about these positions as well is that they're time limited. So I'm only in this job for 3 years before somebody else will take it on, and I'll go back to doing my teaching and research full time. But it's interesting, it's interesting because you get to be involved in decision making at quite a high level in the university, and that's really interesting, and that's quite a responsibility as well. And also you get to work with really great people, including our full-time administrators who are fantastic. Our professional staff are really brilliant, and you get to work with them as well. So it can be a bit of a juggling act, but I think on balance it's a good thing. But I'm very glad that there is a time limit on the administrative roles.
Well, maybe you can file for an extension if you like it.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
A few minutes ago, you already touched on our last question about doctoral opportunities, but can you just reiterate for us what doctoral opportunities do you have in the sciences specifically to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have basically everybody who's conducting research or runs a lab or has a research program will be looking for doctoral students at different stages. So as I said, the routes in are either a student kind of gets some funding awarded to them that they then kind of bring with them to the project, or the researcher gets awarded a funded grant and then looks for staff to work on that project. Sometimes also we have all of our PhD programs are structured in that the student is expected to take credits sort of outside the lab in different take different modules in statistics or in various different things, as well as work on the research project. But sometimes we have sort of structured PhD programs that students are invited to apply for. So they will be, let's say, a 4-year program where in the first year the student will have a research experience maybe in 2 or 3 different labs, and then they decide which one they want to go to, and then spend 3 years whatever there. And they tend to be funded by particular funding agencies. And when that happens, then there'll be those positions on that program will be advertised. So that's sort of another way that we can get doctoral students into particular programs. And there aren't any of those running in the sciences in Trinity at the moment because we don't have the funding for that at the moment. But that's the kind of model that often happens, for example, in the UK. Where they'll have those kinds of programs. So yeah, there's a variety of different routes in, as I said, and really it depends on the finances that are available.
Kind of like the idea where the student gets a little survey of a couple of different areas, and then they get to choose their final pathway, which we really don't do here. So
yeah, it's a great model, and we've run a few programs like that, but the funding is very difficult to get for that kind of program. But I think it's a model that should be more widely used, because it gives the student a breadth of experience before they focus in on the particular project that they're going to research.
Absolutely. Well, that's the end of my questions. We're going to open the floor up, and hopefully Alicia had some questions from the audience for Dr. Kelly.
Sure. Let me go ahead and do a new share here. I can see the audience. Sorry. Okay. It doesn't look like we have any questions right now, but in the meantime, if there's any students here, if you have any questions, please put them in our Q&A box. And Dr. Kelly, I actually was able to look at the fourth attribute.
Oh,
and it was communicate effectively.
That's it. Well, isn't it terrible that I'm trying to communicate to people and the very one I forgot was communicate effectively? Yeah.
So, you also mentioned that there were a few people that you guys were voting for the woman bust in the Trinity Library, I believe it was. Do you know who were the candidates?
Oh, lots of different people suggested lots of different names. So the three criteria were: you had to be a woman, you had to be dead, and you had to have achieved something of note, you know, in the arts or sciences, or, you know, I mean, people were suggesting the oddest people, but quite a number of, well, Marie Sklodowska-Curie obviously was a very obvious one that a lot of people were suggesting. Oh gosh, everybody from, you know, Jane Austen, you know, I mean, lots of different people, because it was completely open. It was open to not just the Irish public, to anybody who wanted to write in and suggest. And there is a list somewhere of the people who were proposed. And apparently there's a committee, because everything has to be done by committee. There's a committee there evaluating the names. And hopefully we'll hear pretty soon who it's going to be. And I think actually it's not even just who it's going to be. I think it was said that there were going to be 2. Now I personally think there should be 40 to match the 40 men, but anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there over time.
It's a good start.
Yes.
It is a good start. It is a good start.
And although not research-based, Alamo Colleges is starting to have experiential learning take off at our institution. So you were talking about biodiversity, I believe it was in Kenya. Can you give other examples of what might a student expect?
Oh gosh, yeah, it really just depends on their field of study. So we have, so for example, in chemistry, You could have a student maybe working on development of a new drug, because we have a degree program in medicinal chemistry here. In physics, we've got we've got an excellent nanoscience institute, looking at nanotechnology, looking at production of new materials at the nanoscale. So we have students working in that kind of area. We could have students working in the area of sports and exercise medicine. I'm in the physiology department, and we have a few really excellent exercise scientists working here. And we had one of our students was an elite rower a few years ago, and he wanted to work on a project using his own kind of peers, elite rowers, as subjects, looking at particular training regimes. So he was able to structure a project around his own interests in that way. So yeah, it really, if there is a researcher working in that particular area, there is the possibility to provide a capstone project for a student in that area. So they're a very, very diverse range of projects.
That's great to hear. I also, what I was happy to hear is that Trinity College to give students a little taste or a sample of what they might expect in their actual field before actually committing to that field. Because yesterday we were on a Zoom call for London, England, and it sounded like there's so much pressure for an 18-year-old to decide what they want to do. And then it sounds like pretty much once they're set, they're fully set. They're locked in, and they have to study that for forever.
Yeah, we have a sort of a flexible approach to our programs. So an example of that would be for students who are interested maybe in the arts and humanities, you can come in as single honors. So let's say you come in and you decide, okay, I'm going to study English, and you take most of your modules in English, and then maybe you'll take a few in another language or in history or whatever. You can pick up a new subject in the second year, and you can continue that on. And depending on the balance of modules that you take, you can then graduate with joint honors fully in, let's say, English and history, or you can continue with English as your major, take history as your minor. If you come in with joint honors and you decide that you don't like one of the subjects, you can drop it and you can go and continue in single honors. So there's a sort of a degree of flexibility there, because we do understand that it is enormous pressure for a student to be expected to know exactly what it is that they want to do. I mean, and some students do, but some don't. And likewise in our sciences, so in the biological and biomedical sciences degree, which is actually the most popular degree with US students here in Trinity, students will do core biology modules, but they also get the opportunity to take modules in other sciences. So in geoscience or in chemistry or physics. We also have a module in the history, philosophy and ethics of science that is compulsory for all our science students, which is I think really, really good addition to the program. And then in the third and fourth year, the students will specialize in some particular area of biological and biomedical sciences. So it could be environmental science or zoology or botany if you're interested in that kind of area, or if you're more interested in molecular biology, you have the opportunity to take biochemistry or immunology or neuroscience. So we try to, it's still quite structured. It's not like a sort of a liberal arts kind of program, it's still very structured, but there's flexibility within it. For students just to pick up other subjects that they want to try out and then maybe not pursue all the way through to the final degree.
That's great to hear. Thank you. We don't have any questions in the chat, but I believe Dr. Bradley, you have a few.
I think you're muted. I still can't hear you.
How about now?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Spacebar does not work. All right, Dr. Kelly. I'm really a fan of diversity in scientific education. I know for myself, I really enjoyed certain professors as an undergraduate, and they really brought science alive to me. I remember entomology as an undergraduate was, and I did not become an entomologist, but it was an awesome course and piqued my interest. And I think those kinds of things have great value, and people try to focus, I think, too quickly on a particular area and kind of have that narrow view. And there's so much to be gained from having a broader view of science, and moving around different labs is a great idea. I know as a graduate student, I started out in parasitology and moved on to soil microbiology and eventually medical microbiology. And, you know, it was all sort of a progression. And I think having the opportunities to branch out into different labs and see how people do things and learn what they're researching just gives us an important breadth of experience and appreciation, and helps us to kind of find out what we really want. And so I think I'm a big fan of that. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. And more and more, I suppose traditionally we're used to thinking of scientists as sort of, you know, being in their kind of locked away in their little ivory tower and beavering away on their own particular project. But increasingly, scientific discovery is collaborative. And, you know, to answer some of the big questions, we need the perspective of different disciplines. So I think, you know, being able to get some hands-on experience in different disciplines and get that sense of what's going on outside of your own narrow area is huge. And again, just to bring it back to Trinity, we have a new institute called E3, which is Engineering, the Environment and Emerging Technologies. So we are building 2 new buildings, one that we're calling the Learning Foundry, which is for undergraduates mainly, and then we've got another research institute elsewhere near the campus for postgraduates. And the idea is that we're bringing together expertise in engineering, in computer science, and in natural sciences, and particularly environmental sciences, to look at things like you know, climate change and so on, to see how we can bring expertise together to solve these big questions that aren't just going to be solved by one discipline or by one group of people. We really have to collaborate together in order to make gains in be it in environmental science or be it in medicine or whatever else it is. So absolutely, the sort of the diversity of experience and perspective and the whole collaborative aspect is key in the sciences.
And I think it's great that you are involving the undergraduates in research. I mean, that's a great opportunity, and I think it's an important part of a scientific degree, having some, even if it's very limited, hands-on research experience. It just gives the students, you know, a new view on how discoveries are really made. And even in just analyzing scientific papers, you know.
Yeah. It gives you a sense, I think, of all of the blood, sweat and tears that goes into every figure that you read in a paper. You know, it's or even looking at the techniques and going, okay, no, I understand that now because I did that, and I know how they generated that little piece of data. You know, it's so important in scientific training.
So, anyways, I think it's a nice program. I like your setup.
Thank you.
And we've got one question in the chat from Daniel Jenkins. He's asking, is there an aerospace program?
There isn't. So the programs that we have are in science are sort of broadly split along biological and biomedical sciences, chemical sciences, geography and geosciences, and physical sciences. We also have a separate mathematics program and a theoretical physics program. And within physics, we have physics and astrophysics. We have sort of materials science as well, and we have pure physics. So nothing particularly aerospace, but we do have, physics and maths programs that I suppose are linked to some of those areas.
Thank you so much. And I don't have any other questions for you, but I do want to just say thank you so much, and we appreciate your time. I know your time is very valuable, so thank you so much for participating.
Oh, I was so happy to do so, Alicia. And, if anybody has any questions, you can contact me, or perhaps via Professor Chandler, or whatever the best route is. If there's anything that strikes you or that you think about afterwards that you'd like to know more about, I'd be very happy to answer questions. And I think International Education Week is just a fantastic thing to do. And I'm very happy to have been able to bring the Irish perspective, and particularly the Trinity perspective, to your International Education Week. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you. Yay. Ireland.
You'll all have to come and visit again. I know you've been here several times, but you'll hopefully when normal life resumes, you'll be back again.
Oh, hopefully.
Well, summer 2022, we'll be staying with you again, and I'll come find your lab.
I think every single International Education Week event is just making my travel bug just like that much more prominent. Thank you so much. Thank you all for everybody that's attending, and I hope to see you in the other International Education Week events. And Daniel Jenkins, you are our winner for our International Snack Box. So I'll go ahead and email you, and you should be hearing from me later today, probably tomorrow. Sorry. Oh, today's Friday. Sorry, later today.
This is it.
All right. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.